I never thought a simple shortcut could change my life forever. But that night, when I decided to cut through the woods, I made the worst mistake of my life. It started as just a way to save time, a quick path I thought I knew. But the deeper I walked, the more I realized I was completely wrong. Have you ever felt that sudden drop in your stomach, the kind that tells you something is very, very wrong? That night, it hit me hard, almost like the woods themselves were watching, waiting. Strange sounds echoed around me, shadows twisted and flickered just beyond my sight. And then, I wasn't alone. What was out there? Why did it feel like the darkness was closing in? I kept telling myself to turn back, but every step forward dragged me deeper into a nightmare I couldn't escape. This isn't just a story about getting lost in the woods. It's about what happens when you ignore that gut feeling, when curiosity and stubbornness push you into something much darker than you imagined. I want to tell you exactly what happened, every creepy sound, every heartbeat that raced faster than the last, so you never make the same mistake I did. Because some shortcuts don't lead anywhere good. The woods I took that night weren't unfamiliar. I had passed through them countless times before during the day, usually with friends, laughter echoing between the trees, sunlight filtering through the leaves. But nighttime changes everything. It turns the familiar into something strange and unsettling, like the world itself is holding its breath. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, but there was something else too, a faint, almost metallic smell that I couldn't place. The moon was just a sliver in the sky, barely enough light to guide my steps. Shadows stretched and shifted, turning the trees into towering shapes that seemed to lean in closer with every step I took. I remember the crunch of dry leaves under my shoes, louder than usual in the quiet. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying strange, almost indecipherable sounds, soft snaps, distant rustling, maybe even a faint low growl. I tried to convince myself it was just animals, nothing more. But the way the sound seemed to move with me, never far behind, unsettled me more than I cared to admit. The path itself was narrow and winding, overgrown in places where I hadn't been for months. Roots jutted out like fingers, threatening to trip me up. Every now and then, I'd catch glimpses of eyes, tiny, reflective dots, watching from the darkness. I told myself it was just deer or raccoons, but those eyes never blinked. They just stared. I thought about turning back more than once. But pride, or maybe fear of looking weak, kept me moving forward. The woods had a strange way of swallowing sounds, like my footsteps were fading into nothing. And then, the silence hit, a deep, suffocating silence that felt heavier than the darkness itself. That's when I noticed the trees. They weren't just trees anymore. Their twisted branches looked like claws, reaching out toward me, their bark rough and almost too sharp to touch. Some of the trunks seemed to pulse subtly, like the forest was alive and breathing around me. I could feel it, watching, waiting. The path began to feel wrong, like it wasn't leading where I thought it would. The landmarks I remembered, the big fallen log, the bend by the creek, were missing. Instead, I was surrounded by dense thickets that closed in tight, forcing me to push through brambles that snagged at my clothes and skin. The chill in the air deepened, crawling into my bones despite the jacket I wore. As I moved deeper, the forest seemed to grow quieter again, but this time it wasn't peaceful, it was tense, expectant. The kind of silence that holds its breath before something terrible happens. I stopped for a moment, scanning the darkness. The moon's faint light revealed strange shapes moving just beyond my vision, too fast to catch properly. My heart began to race. I started to question how much I really knew about these woods. What secrets were hidden beneath the surface? What had I walked into? I thought it was just my imagination at first, little things that didn't add up but I brushed off. Maybe the wind had shifted, carrying sounds from far away. But then, it became impossible to ignore. It started with the sounds. At first, just faint, whispers almost, like someone breathing just behind the trees. The kind of sound you think you hear when you're already on edge. But the whispers didn't fade. They grew louder, sharper, almost like voices speaking in a language I couldn't understand, but somehow felt meant for me. I tried calling out, "Hello." But my voice sounded weak, swallowed by the thick night air. No answer. Just those whispers circling around me, weaving between the trees. I felt cold fingers of fear grip my spine. Then there were the shadows. Always at the edge of my vision, flickering and twisting. I'd catch a glimpse of something tall and thin moving just beyond the trees, too fast to be an animal, too quiet to be human. Every time I turned my head, there was nothing there. But the feeling stayed, the crushing weight of being watched. My heart was pounding harder now. I told myself to stay calm, to breathe. "You're just tired," I thought. "You're imagining things." But the woods had a way of making you question reality. I found a fallen tree to lean against and tried to gather my thoughts. My flashlight was flickering, the batteries weak, or maybe something else. The beam cut weakly through the darkness, illuminating patches of moss and gnarled roots, but not much more. Suddenly, a crack, sharp and close. I spun around, shining the flashlight toward the sound. Nothing but empty space. But then I heard it again, closer this time. Crunching leaves, like footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Panic started to rise. I wasn't alone, and whatever was out there wasn't friendly. I moved quickly, trying to put distance between myself and the noise. But the woods seemed to stretch, paths twisting and turning in ways I didn't remember. I tried to retrace my steps, but every landmark was gone. The trees here looked different, twisted in ways that made the shadows look like faces, watching, waiting. Then came the silence again. This time, it felt heavy and unnatural. Like the world had stopped moving. Even the animals were gone. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just the pounding of my own heart in my ears. And then I saw it, a flash of white between the trees. Not fur or feathers, but something pale and smooth. It moved too fast for me to focus on, disappearing into the darkness like smoke. I froze. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Was it an animal? A person? Or something else? Suddenly, a chill swept through me, deeper than the cold air. I felt breath on my neck, but when I turned, no one was there. My mind raced. Every horror story I'd ever heard flashed through my head, the legends about these woods, stories of people who disappeared, voices calling out from nowhere. But I'd never believed any of it. Until now. I wanted to run, but my legs felt heavy, like they were stuck in quicksand. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, almost desperate. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I stumbled forward, desperate to escape the creeping dread. But the path wasn't leading me anywhere. Instead, I was surrounded by darkness, trapped in a maze of twisted trees and shadows that seemed alive. The woods weren't just woods anymore. They were a living nightmare, and I was trapped inside. I can still remember the exact moment when everything changed, that instant when the woods stopped feeling like just trees and shadows and became something else entirely. I had been stumbling through the thick darkness for what felt like hours, although I'm not sure how much time had actually passed. My flashlight flickered weakly, barely cutting through the night, and the whispers had turned into low, guttural murmurs that I couldn't quite make out. The air had grown heavy, thick with tension, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Then I saw it. At first, it was just a shape, a figure standing between two ancient oaks, half hidden in the darkness but impossible to ignore. It was tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that seemed too long and too bendy, like it was stretched beyond what a human body could be. Its skin looked pale, almost translucent, like it was glowing faintly in the moonlight. My heart slammed in my chest. I tried to back away, but my feet felt like they were glued to the ground. The creature didn't move, but I could feel its eyes, if it even had eyes, piercing straight through me. Then it did something even more terrifying. It tilted its head, slowly, almost curiously, like it was studying me. And in that moment, I swear I heard it whisper my name. Not in words, but in a sound that felt like a cold breeze brushing past my ear. I wanted to scream, to run, but the sound caught in my throat. The creature stepped forward, just a slow, deliberate step, and the ground beneath me seemed to tremble. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a storm of voices, each one filled with a kind of cruel amusement. I blinked, and suddenly the figure was gone. I don't know how or where it disappeared to. 1 second it was there, the next, the space between the trees was empty, but the feeling of being watched remained, stronger than ever. I tried to move again, this time faster, desperate to escape the paralyzing fear. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye, a flicker of movement, far to my left, where the shadows clung tightest. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw more figures, smaller, but no less terrifying. They moved like shadows themselves, slipping silently between the trees, watching, waiting. My breath came in ragged gasps. My mind screamed at me to run, but the woods felt like a cage, closing in with every step. I stumbled into a small clearing. For a moment, I thought I might find safety there, but the silence was too complete, the darkness too thick. And then I heard it, a low, guttural growl coming from just beyond the edge of the clearing. I turned my flashlight toward the sound, hands trembling. The beam revealed nothing but twisted branches and leaves, but the growl grew louder, closer. It wasn't animalistic, too deep, too wrong. It was something ancient and hungry. The feeling of dread exploded inside me, pushing me to run, but the path behind me had vanished. The trees had shifted, closing off the way I'd come. I was trapped. I don't remember how long I stayed there, frozen in place, eyes darting through the darkness. The whispers surrounded me again, voices merging into a dreadful chorus. Then, the tall figure reappeared, stepping silently into the clearing. This time, it didn't move toward me. Instead, it pointed, a long, thin finger stretching out toward a dark patch of the woods. I had no choice but to follow. I didn't want to follow, but the creature's gesture left me no choice. My legs moved on their own, dragging me toward the dark patch it had pointed to. Every step felt like walking deeper into a trap, but hope was fading fast. I had to keep moving. The woods around me seemed alive in ways I didn't understand. The trees twisted and bent as if breathing, their branches brushing against my skin like cold fingers. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe, and the whispers turned into guttural growls, circling me like predators closing in. I glanced behind me. The path I'd come from had disappeared completely. The forest had shifted, closing off my escape. Panic clawed at my throat, my heart pounding so loud I was sure it would give me away. Suddenly, a branch snapped sharply to my right. I whipped my head around, flashlight flickering wildly. Shadows danced between the trees, too fast to follow, too close to ignore. I could hear something moving, soft footsteps, but heavier than any animal's. I started running, branches slapping my face and grabbing at my clothes. The ground was uneven and slippery, roots threatening to trip me up. The growls were getting louder, echoing in the darkness all around me. I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. It was like the woods themselves were swallowing my voice. Every direction I turned was wrong. The trees closed in tighter, the darkness deeper. The whispers turned to laughter, cold, cruel, and unrelenting. I stumbled into a shallow ditch and fell hard, scraping my hands and knees on the rough earth. Pain shot through me, but I forced myself up and kept moving. The presence behind me was getting closer, breath heavy, steps deliberate. I could almost feel it, hot and hungry, just behind me. Then the worst happened. I tripped over a root and fell face-first into the dirt. As I scrambled to get up, a sharp, cold breath brushed past my ear, followed by a whisper. "Not so fast." I froze. The shadows thickened around me, and a cold hand, too thin to be human, brushed my shoulder. I yanked it away and scrambled to my feet, heart hammering. I ran blindly, crashing through underbrush, my flashlight barely holding on. The laughter turned into a roar, filling the woods with an awful, hungry sound. I was running out of time, out of options, and out of hope. But then, just when I thought the darkness would swallow me whole, I saw it, a faint glimmer of light far ahead. Could it be the edge of the woods? Safety. I sprinted toward it, every ounce of strength I had left. Behind me, the growls turned into screams, inhuman, filled with rage. I burst through the trees and into an open field, gasping for breath. The forest behind me was silent again, as if nothing had followed. I looked back once more. The woods were just trees again, peaceful and quiet. But I knew better now. Something lived in those shadows, waiting for the next fool to wander too far. I thought I was safe when I hit the open field. The cold night air filled my lungs, and for a moment, I let myself believe the nightmare was over. But the woods don't let you go that easily. Just as I was slowing down, trying to catch my breath, I heard it, a low, guttural growl from the tree line behind me. Not just any growl. This one was closer, sharper. Something was coming. I froze. The hair on my arms stood up as I slowly turned. And then I saw it, emerging from the darkness, the tall figure from before. But this time, it wasn't alone. Behind it, shadows swirled and shifted, like smoke taking shape into cruel, twisted faces. Eyes glowing red, teeth bared in silent snarls. They moved closer, relentless, the ground seeming to tremble beneath their feet. My heart was pounding in my ears, blood roaring in my veins. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body refused to obey. The fear was paralyzing. The tall figure stepped forward, its pale skin almost glowing in the moonlight. It tilted its head once again, that same chilling curiosity in its gaze. Then, it stretched out a long, thin finger, pointing directly at me. I felt a coldness spread from where it touched the air between us, like ice crawling over my skin. Time slowed, and I could hear the whispers again, growing louder, sharper, filling my mind with voices that weren't my own. I tried to resist, but something inside me broke. The terror, the darkness, it swallowed every part of me. And then, everything went black. When I finally came to, I was lying at the edge of the woods, dawn just starting to bleed into the sky. My body ached like I'd been through a war, and my mind felt foggy, like waking from the worst nightmare but knowing it wasn't over. The woods behind me were quiet, peaceful, almost innocent. But I knew better. Whatever I'd faced in the darkness was real. It had marked me. I got up slowly, every muscle protesting, and stumbled toward the nearest road. When I saw headlights approaching, relief crashed over me like a wave. I flagged down the car, barely able to speak. The driver called for help, and soon I was safe, away from those woods and the horrors inside. But the memory never left me. The whispers, the shadows, the feeling of cold fingers brushing past, I carry it with me, like a scar you can't see but can always feel. I haven't gone back, and I never will. Some places are best left alone, some shortcuts never meant to be taken. If you ever find yourself near those woods, take my advice, don't go looking for the quick way out. Sometimes, the long path is the safer one. And if you hear whispers in the dark, don't answer.